Welcome to Beyond the Surface. We highlight underrepresented voices in architecture and humanize architects by uncovering who they are beyond the surface. Hi, I'm your host, Alex Sanchez, representing Illinois Tech's student chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects. Today's episode is called Born to Build Chicago, with our guest, Davey Friday. Davey is an artist from the south side of Chicago. He has a bachelor's of science in biology from Roosevelt University and master's in architecture and landscape architecture. Davey is also practicing multimedia fine artist with several gallery exhibitions under his belt. He's currently an urban designer with Perkins Will. Thank you for being with us today. How are you doing?
Thank you. I feel great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being our second guest on the show. This is very exciting, but let's get into the conversations. So, how do you feel growing up in Bronzeville, Chicago, shaped how you see the world?
I tell people all the time that I'm extremely Chicago-centric. Growing up in a city like Chicago that has such a measurable identity, a city that you can feel its energy and it reverberates around the world, and then growing up in a very specific pocket of that ecosystem has done wonders to shape my experience before and after studying architecture and design. So growing up in Bronzeville, I lived here when the towers were still here. I spent time in a lot of the project housing around the city as my family lived in some of those buildings, and moving around to different places in Bronzeville in itself just greatly shaped my awareness of the spatial differences in the city. You know, you go one neighborhood and it's completely different, but also the racial identity and how that's sewn in these streets and in these walls. So it's had a profound effect on how I view the world.
It seems like Bronzeville kind of connects you differently because of the fact that you grew here. What aspects from that do you feel like inspire your artistic personality?
Yeah, well, Bronzeville at one point had the highest concentration of black people outside of Africa at its peak with the towers. And I'm a fourth generation Bronzeville resident. My great grandmothers moved to Bronzeville during the Great Migration of the 20s and the 30s.
You have history here.
Yeah, a lot of history here, and it has been such a staple of Black American culture since people began to move here, like a Harlem, like a Tulsa. That Black cultural identity is so rich in Bronzeville, and then to be born into it, almost baptized into this, has had such a profound implication on the way that I view myself and therefore the way I express myself in my artistry.
So when did you start doing art?
I've been drawing and painting since I was a kid, since before I could probably form a coherent sentence. I've picked up pencils and drawn pictures. My mom still got a bunch of sketches when I was a kid. I took an art class at the Art Institute when I was 6 years old, and I couldn't continue it because it was just so far. We had lived on 103rd at the time, so traveling from 103rd all the way downtown was just not feasible. But that really started to get my gears going, and I've been drawing feverishly ever since. So it's really in me. It's like innate.
And you said you grew up on 103rd. How did you get from there to Bronzeville?
So my parents split up, actually. So we moved. I was born in South Shore. We lived in South Shore for a little bit. My father would buy a house on 103rd in Oglesby, the Trumbull neighborhood around Jeffrey Manor in South Deering. And then my parents split when I was about 4 or 5, and my mom moved back to Bronzeville. And we stayed on 35th and Cottage in that complex over there. And then she would move from there to 45th. And so we've been there ever since.
You end up later studying biology. When did you feel like in your childhood you had that leap of faith?
Well, I wouldn't even say it was a leap of faith, but more so a consequence of my ego. I had always done well in school, and I started to get into, not serious trouble, but a little trouble in high school, just being rebellious. I went to an all-boy Catholic school, and that just didn't fit my personality. And, and they tried to make me feel small or unintelligent, tried to strip me of all of the things that I've earned, I felt like, in elementary school. So I only got a biology degree to just prove to people like, yeah, I am smart, which is counterproductive because even though I could do it, that wasn't what my heart was. So I had the intelligence to make it through a biology degree, but I was never going to be, who I am in design as a biologist. Like, yeah, I could do it, but can I excel at it? No. So it's really a consequence of my ego. Just trying to prove to people I'm smart as opposed to following my passions, which I kind of course corrected after my grad degree.
In that case, from biology, how did you end up going to architecture or even come to IIT?
So I got into IIT for my master's of science in biology. I was going to transfer from the Master of Science to the PhD program, get a PhD in biology and try to teach. But my mom was like, when you were a kid, you really wanted to be an architect. And I did. When I was in first grade, I thought that architects drew on site for some reason. So I drew a picture of me drawing on site, and my friends were construction workers. Like, I vividly remember this drawing that I made in first grade. And somewhere along the line, I just lost that dream. And my mom saying that to me really re-inspired that idea. And it just so happened that IIT had a Master's of Architecture program. So I ended up just having a meeting with Ron Henderson. I didn't know if I was going to do it or not, but he did something that was so profound. When he was explaining to me my schedule, he was drawing abstract shapes to represent time blocks and stuff like that. And as a fine artist, I always use art aesthetically. I never use it as a tool for design communication. I didn't know this at the time, but he was doing that, using drawing as a tool for design communication to communicate my schedule to me. And that was really powerful to me, to seeing what drawing could be outside of just being pretty pictures. So that made me want to commit. And then landscape architecture isn't dissimilar from biology. Like, I had to take ecology classes as a biologist, and I took ecology classes in landscape architecture. So it's really akin to the work I did as a biologist. So that foundation that was laid actually proved itself valuable to landscape architecture. So it was really a happy accident.
And how long did you end up studying at IIT?
4 years. I did a 4-year dual master's program because I didn't have a bachelor's of architecture. I had to take an extra year.
Okay. One thing that you are known for at IIT is challenging Mises, Crown Hall, and the Mecca Flats.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us why that was so important to you?
Yeah, so I really feel like, and deservedly so, Mies gets a lot of credit for the trail he blazed in architecture. But the consequence of those fires was my neighborhood burning. IIT campus sits on not just Mecca Flats, where Crown Hall sits 1-to-1, but all of the Miesian campus that became IIT were thousands of homes that Black people had. And that erasure is violence. So even though we get the Crown Hall and eventually the Farnsworth House and all of these other feats of modern architecture, the consequence that was paid in order to have that were thousands of people who already, due to restrictive housing covenants, had very limited housing options, lost thousands of homes, and that has reverberated in Bronzeville ever since. So that I really wanted people to be aware of that. It's not even to say Mies is good or bad, but we can't just put him on a pedestal as this god of architecture when he has some really ugly histories to his name too. And so me and a good friend of mine who also studied at IIT, Roland Nolden, we did a show in IIT and then at a gallery called Roots and Culture that was birthed from this understanding that Crown Hall sits on the ghost of Mecca Flats. People fought hard for that building, and IIT is complicit in starving out that building. And I think that's just important history to know, not to say that it was good or bad, because I personally love Crown Hall. The time that I spent in there was beautiful. But in order for me to have that experience, people had to suffer. People had to be kicked out of their homes to try to find new places to live. So we can't ignore that history. It has to be acknowledged.
Would you say that it also affects you too?
Yeah. There is like a cognitive dissonance that I have to engage in while I was studying at IIT, while I'm having this profound experience. And again, what was once the Blackest neighborhood in the world, I was the only Black student in a master's program. That's a problem.
Very
much,
yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So it really, and when I remember as a child driving down State Street, seeing south of IIT, all of the project housing, seeing how the streetscapes were crumbled. I didn't have the vocabulary to articulate this at the time, but it was very noticeable even as a child. And when I would transition onto IIT's campus and, we have this beautiful State Street Boulevard, I always used to question why. Why was it like this as a kid? These are vivid thoughts that I can remember having as a child. So not only does it just affect me, but it affects all the other little Black kids who have to transverse this campus and feel othered in their own neighborhood over generations now. And that's very, very clear. I think it's defined in my experience for sure.
And understanding like the history of Mecca Flats, how does that fit into your goals for community development?
Yeah, so I just to real quick aside, I love the work that Maurice Cox has done as the
Yeah.
commissioner of the Department of Planning, because he has now given me precedent to follow to address these questions. Because it wasn't just Mecca Flats. Mecca Flats is a case study. It is thousands of buildings that have been erased. There are thousands of places that have been replaced. And knowing the methods used to tear down Mecca Flats and get those people out of that building, understanding how that unfolded gives us places to put blockers so this doesn't happen again. Because it's not like that wasn't a historic, beautiful building of itself. It was a wonderful building as well. It was a building built for the Columbian Exposition. So that alone, the detailing of the building, the beauty of the building was worth saving. Not to mention that these were people's homes, oppressed people's homes. So understanding that history and then seeing the work that Maurice Cox does gives me a toolkit as I design and as I think about the kind of work that I want to accept and the work I want to engage in. It gives me a toolkit to do the work that I need to do sensitively, and I appreciate that. I do appreciate that experience.
I feel like Maurice Cox definitely works against like gentrification and helping communities. And I do feel like a huge example of people that have been pushed out of the neighborhood is Crown Hall. And the fact that Mecca Flats used to be built there and all the history is erased, it's like nobody on this campus really knows about it. And I feel like that's something that's very sad. And Maurice is very much a person who has worked also in the community building up, and he created Invest Southwest. That's all like qualities in a person who wants to create a difference in Chicago.
Yeah, and just a little aside, just to give some credit to Lori Lightfoot, because he wouldn't have that job without her. And what I didn't know was the status quo was to have somebody in the legal system run the Department of Planning. And he was the first designer we've had. I think, don't quote me, it might be ever, but at least in the recent history. So for her to have that foresight to allow a fantastic design-based person come in and steer this ship in a way that I think has been transformative. I benefited from the Invest Southwest program personally, so fantastic.
I know we've been talking about the Mecca Flats for a bit, but can you talk about some of the history behind it and how hard it was to find that history and to get it known to the people on this campus?
Yeah, definitely. So the Mecca Flats was a building erected in the late 1800s, around the 1880s, 1890s. It was originally designed to be a hotel for the Great Columbian Exposition, which was Chicago's World Fair. This World Fair is generally credited with putting Chicago on the map, so to speak, making it a true global city. This is only 40 years after Chicago's incorporation, and it's had reverberating effects on the city at large. But Mecca Flats was designed as a hotel. Again, Bronzeville being the place where black people fleeing Jim Crow South to the north were often segregated as to keep the black residents away from the white residents. And this area would evolve and expand over time. Mecca Flats had become an overcrowded but a living quarters for these people who have been historically segregated. So once you pair the removal of Mecca Flats and subsequent buildings along IIT's campus with the devastation to the housing stock that the Dan Ryan Expressway would do, which is immediately west of IIT's campus, it was devastating. Me and Roland did a show in Crown Hall called Meets Kill Jazz, which is tongue-in-cheek. It's not one-to-one.
Yeah.
But this is where jazz lived in the city. These are where great artists would come to perform. And it doesn't stop at Mecca Flats. But honestly, I would know about the Mecca Flats story if it wasn't for Roland. He could tell the story better than I can, but he was invited by the interim dean at the time to come and do some work on a Saturday, I believe it was. And he showed up, and some archaeologists were excavating around Crown Hall, and they had uncovered these tiles from the former Mecca Flats. And they found like soda cap bottles, and they found like little marbles that kids were playing with, like these remnants of the life that was lived prior to Crown Hall's construction. And then after doing a little more digging in preparation for our show at IIT and our show in Roots and Culture Gallery, we just dug really deep into the history. And the great Chicago poet Gwendolyn Brooks will go on to write a book of poetry and it all takes place in Mecca Flats called In the Mecca. So in one of the videos that Roland had prepared, which sourced a lot of other videos speaking about Mecca Flats, one gentleman spoke about how Mecca Flats and Crown Hall, that site, is where two of history's greatest artists, Mies van der Rohe as an architect and Gwendolyn Brooks as a poet, this is where their work intersects. And it speaks to the history of that building. It speaks to the history of that literal parcel of land and how important it is and was.
I know that that has happened to many other buildings in Bronzeville, including like the Baptist church, which is also kind of like where gospel music was created. I can see the whole Mies destroying jazz thing.
And again, it's not even just like this is just the example that we put forth so people can make a more human connection, but this has happened all over the country. And we're talking about a 60-year-old history. I'm sure my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers saw the Mecca Flats building before Crown Hall was there, even if they can't say that, oh, that was the Mecca, or, oh, I remember that specific building. You know, it was a part of their experience. And my great-grandmother, she passed at 102 in 2021, and she migrated to Chicago in the 40s. She was 21 years old. So think of all of that history in Bronzeville she would have seen over the time. My other great-grandmother, who passed at 94 back in like 2014, again, lived in Bronzeville her whole life. During her funeral procession, we drove past her house, and I think it was on like 39th or something like that. These histories are very fresh and very recent, and it has implications on the issues that we have today.
What are your goals, and how does this entire experience with your artwork, the Mecca Flats, learning about the history of Crown Hall, inspire their goals?
Yeah, so my goals is really to return to some of the great Black neighborhoods that we've seen in the past. And it is heartbreaking to say that some of the greatest Black communities that we were able to make in more oppressive times have been razed, have been just devastated. And I want to see a return to that, because all of the issues we see in inner cities are by design. And it is a reason why it disproportionately affects Black youth. And it's because the neighborhoods that people have been forced into and have no control over continue to dilapidate. And I want to design large swaths of spaces where people can have basically an incubator place, a neighborhood that feels like home, that feels like somebody cared, that from your childhood up into your adulthood, you feel like you're amongst beauty and not decay and not violence. And violence isn't just what humans do to each other physically. It's about the places that we set up, what we do to buildings, how we treat our ecologies. And again, I wouldn't be doing anything new at all. It's just really pulling back up what we've had before, and that makes a greater America in general, because when the people who are suffering the worst are handed places and handed things that help them, that reverberates across everybody. And even though Black people are my subject to my focus, they are not exclusively who I design for. I believe in making great communities for everybody. And we can't have some that are good and some that are bad. And what has consistently been the difference is racial factors. We have to concert our efforts there, because this country has been set up as a racialized society, for better or for worse.
So you ended up interning with Omni Ecosystems. Can you tell us a little bit how that taught you kind of like more of what you wanted to do?
Absolutely. So as I was speaking to earlier, this is how I benefited from the Invest Southwest program. So Omni Ecosystems, founded by a woman named Molly Myers, a fantastic person, and a professor at IIT is the leader of their design workshop called Omni Workshop, which is a subsect of Omni Ecosystems, a man named Michael Scowland. So I took Michael Scowland's class as a part of my requirements. He was teaching an ecology class on designing with materials. He's a landscape architect by training. And so, again, with my degree in biology, I lean more into landscape architecture because there are studies that show that people's view to beautiful nature can help them heal faster. It makes them feel safer. It makes them feel better because we've been human beings for hundreds of thousands of years. We've lived in cities the way we do. You could argue 10,000, I would say 50 or 60 with the proliferation of industrialization. But all that to say that going through his class and understanding how biology and design basically intersect in landscape architecture and the implications that has on cities as we have to deal with climate change, I kind of like bugged him about getting me an internship. Like, Mike, I need an internship. You are literally around the corner from my house. They moved into this former dairy factory on 42nd and State Street, and they had turned it into their warehouse and their design firm. I'm like, Mike, this is like perfect. The stars aligned perfectly for me. You know what I'm saying? And then as a part of Invest Southwest, it benefited them from hiring me as well. So it was a mutually beneficial relationship. So I started off as a laborer. Actually, I was working on the construction side, building out places. Pitched to him, told him I wanted to do some design work. We made that pivot about 6 months into my working with them, and I did a design internship for a while. And as my internship was approaching its close, I have now graduated. I'm looking for jobs. He would go on to introduce me to a man named Andrew Broderick, who is now my boss at Perkins Will. The folks at Omni Ecosystems, outside of the tools that I've learned there and just the love that I received when I was there, they're wonderful people. They really set me up for success, and I'm benefiting from that work that I've done with them right now.
Yeah, I feel like they were definitely a good platform where to grow yourself and kind of know exactly what you want to do. And you also just benefited from it.
Yeah, and I was about to, and I had every plan of going to get my PhD in urban planning. I had toured at the University of Michigan. I was debating if I was going to do it right out of school or not, but that was my next goal, is to go get my PhD in urban planning. And I was telling Michael that, like, yeah, you know, if the job thing doesn't work out, if I can't find somewhere else that feels right, I'll just go back and get my PhD. He was like, so you want to do urban design? I'm like, yeah, basically. Getting the dual degrees in architecture and landscape architecture, I feel like that sets up urban design. It is. I don't feel like the work that I personally want to do can happen building by building. And I don't think that the world has truly seen the importance of landscape architecture enough where they trust landscape architects meaningfully to reform cities yet, but I think it's coming. But urban design, it feels like, again, with Maurice Cox as now my precedent, it feels like the place where I can do the most work. I have the most impact in the work that I do. So he was like, yeah, if you want to be an urban designer, I know some people. Let me put you in touch with somebody. I believe his wife works as an urban designer at SOM, and then he's really good friends with Andrew Broderick at Perkins Will. He introduced me to both of them, and it ended up working out with Perkins Will.
And what do you do at Perkins Will?
So I'm an urban designer one. We do a lot of master planning. We do street designs, campus planning, innovation hub planning. But it's been fantastic work. I'm working on some projects in historically black neighborhoods around the country, which is exactly what I want to do. We just won a RFP I can't speak too much about, but it's also to address racial inequity in one of America's capital cities. And I said in the interview, I'm like, this is why I got 2 master's degrees, is to address questions exactly like this. And I would like to believe that's why we won, along with all of the fantastic talent that we have at Perkins Will who interviewed with me. But I'm doing the work that I was inspired to pay attention to during my education. So the one-to-one translation, I think, is rare. And I'm so thankful that I got to benefit from that.
How do you feel like urban planning fits into your visions for Chicago?
So we got to this problem with the South and West Sides having the highest rates of poverty, the highest rates of violence by design. Racial housing practices, we all know about redlining, but that happened at a federal level as well. Chicago's put out plans that have destroyed neighborhoods. They tore down vibrant, beautifully built graystones and replaced them with cheap CMU buildings. No landscaping, no humanization. It's like they literally wanted to force black people into little boxes.
That's so sad.
And then when you superimpose policies like men over the age of 18 can't live with their families. So fathers are being forced to leave their homes. You know, there's a stereotype that I hate, that black men aren't good fathers, when per census data today, they're amongst the highest performing fathers. And by design, though, in a city like Chicago, you made it so black men can't be in their families. When you racialize cities and you put whole groups of people in resourceless places, what else is there to do but suffer? And that inspires mental illness problems, that inspires anger and aggression and resentment, and that boils down into all of these symptoms that we love to talk about: violence, miseducation, things like that. But we don't talk about the causes of these problems and this concerted city design over a 200-year history almost. So in order to walk that back, we need to use the same tools. One of my favorite laws of thermodynamics is energy can't be created nor destroyed, only transferred. We're not going to destroy the idea of violence, or we're not going to be able to destroy the history of what happened. We can't destroy these symptoms. We have to use the same tools that got us in this place to get this negative outcome, use those same tools to transmute all of this energy into something positive. And you see that happening in different places. But we also have to make sure that this transmutation isn't about replacing the individual that occupy these places, but we're transmuting the conditions by which they exist and grow up and experience and learn. When you do that at an intentional, grand level, I believe, and what I would like to test in the work that I do, is we can turn these places around.
That's beautiful. That's still like the hardest thing about gentrification or just community building overall, is bringing all those opportunities and things that people need without pushing anybody out. And I feel like that's where things don't end up going well for anybody. That's when people end up living with poverty, on survival mode, 24/7, violence, because sometimes that's the only thing they can do for food, get food on the table. And I could go on about this for a long time.
It's like, imagine that you have a room full of mess.
Yeah.
And one part of the room is really, really clean, and the rest are messy. And you try to clean your room by just moving stuff around. Like, yeah, a new part of the room might be clean, but all you did was move the mess to another corner.
Yeah.
And they tell you not to look at it when you come in. So like when you fly into Chicago, I hate this about IIT. When I did my master's orientation in front of 4,000 students, very few from this city, they told them verbatim, don't go past 35th. There's nothing for you in this city past 35th. Now, Chicago don't stop till 120th. And I live past that. So you're basically saying I don't exist and I have nothing to offer people coming to visit a global city. You're trying to hide your mess. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that is wrong. That is the wrong message to send out to people. So how do we counteract attitudes like that? Okay, well, let's design a great place for people to come. Hyde Park is a beautiful neighborhood. South Shore is a beautiful neighborhood. Woodlawn is becoming one of the best neighborhoods in the city. Amazing things are happening. All Greater Grand Crossing, I can go on and on, all along the south side. And I'm a south sider, so I can't speak too much to the west side, but I love the energy that they have going on over there as well. They have these pop courts that are literally turning what was once some of the highest crime areas in the city into beautiful community-oriented spaces that people are now being able to enjoy. And it is by design. You understand what I'm saying? So I believe that that type of energy can really help us address things like feeling. And again, I even give the public safety officers empathy because I understand what they're saying. They just don't want these kids to go find themselves into some trouble. And I get that. But that's the wrong way to go about it. You can caution people to the realities of danger without discouraging them from getting to know their neighbors.
Yeah, I totally understand that. There's so many people here on this campus who haven't even explored Bronzeville. The only times they have is either to go grocery shopping or something. But most people don't go past 35th or just don't go on 35th. It's like all the good food out there.
Exactly.
I will say, because I'm not from the city, Chicago, that was one of the things that was told to me, don't go past 35th. Don't go into the south side. Well, I have a friend who's from the south side, so I just ended up exploring it with her because she knows what the good areas parts, the bad parts. She tells me where not to go. And now that I've been here for 3 years, I have never really even gone to a part where I'm not supposed to be.
Right.
And also South Chicago is so beautiful, so full of culture. And I feel like just bringing that back to life or just giving it a bit more recognition, the recognition it deserves. It's not all a bad stereotype.
Historic parks, beautiful lakefront that extends all the way to Gary, Indiana. We have wonderful cultural institutions on the south side of Chicago. There are so many reasons to explore, and we can't be discouraging people. We can't be hiding our mess from people. We just have to clean it up.
Exactly.
Entirely and thoughtfully and meaningfully in a way that stays. And it's not, I personally don't believe it's hard. What I do think it is expensive.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you plan to stay working in Chicago?
I've been battling that question recently because I think I said earlier that I'm very Chicago centric, and I think that sometimes that's to a detriment. I think it might benefit me to spend a little bit of time away, just existing in another city meaningfully, just so I can see how things are done elsewhere. What can I learn from another municipality that I can bring back and make Chicago better? I can't know that until I stretch and go see what's out there. And I don't know what that looks like yet. My home base will always be Chicago, and I do plan on practicing for the rest of my life here to some capacity. But I think it would benefit me a little bit to move away. Like, I did every level of education from pre-K, from daycare to a master's degree in the city limits, like in this proper city of Chicago. And that has maybe given me some blinders that I can't even recognize. So I think I want to go, even if it's for a couple months at a time. I think it will really help me as a designer to get some diversity in what I've digested outside of just in theory, outside of just reading about these places or seeing them online or even understanding their planning practices. It's different experiencing a place. And I think that might benefit me a little bit.
I can see that. I feel like traveling definitely like helps. I will say now that I'm in Chicago, I almost don't want to get out anymore.
Yeah, it's the greatest city in the world if you ask me.
So I can see where you're coming from, especially since you grew up here.
Mm-hmm.
This is home to you, and you want to build your own community as well as like other communities here.
Have to.
Yeah, you feel like that your duty, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah. So with the exhibition you ended up doing, what got you to do it?
It's just an extension of my childhood practice. One, I've always had dreams of having gallery exhibitions. And the one we did at Roots and Culture was probably the biggest one I've done in my life. And also just so I can be inspired by the work that Roland does. He is truly a fantastic artist and has such a dedication that spills over onto you. So working with him for a year on this gallery, not only did it help me evolve as an artist in a place where I thought I was stagnated, but he also just inspired a passion to keep practicing. So outside of just the feeling of I finally got the exhibition I was looking for, I was able to build a great relationship with a peer that I feverishly respect. So the community aspect of it was fantastic as well.
And what are your future plans for your artwork?
My future plans are to continue to personalize the artwork that I make. I really want to be readily identifiable without ever having to say that that's my piece, and continue to grow my ability to critique culture in the way that I create and share that with people in a way that is communicable. I want people to feel what I feel when I create work and be able to see that. And I want to have a platform for people to have that type of engagement with me. So I feel like right now my art is a tree that's growing and we just broke the ground. We haven't even formed yet. So it's a lifelong pursuit. Trees grow for hundreds of years. And I wanted to pass my human life as well. So that's a big goal of mine.
I like that. I feel like your artwork is very spiritual. It connects who you are versus kind of like who you are spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see the way it also reflects in your architecture. And I'm glad that you will continue to do it. What made you continue pursuing art? Because I feel like there comes to the point where it's just like, oh, this is my hobby. What made it be like, oh, I want to show everybody my work. I want to put it in an exhibition.
Yeah, because it's my peace and it's my therapy and it's my prayer. And I can't exist without working as an artist. Like, even if nobody saw it, even if I ended up giving up that ambition of sharing my work, I would still create it because it is so important for my sanity. It's so important for my peace of mind. I just love feeling like, and again, understanding that this isn't me. It's not my ego producing this. And I used to create work out of a sense of ego, like, oh, I'm so talented, look at what I make. And I had ran into a wall, basically. And once I realized, like, oh, I didn't invent English. Even the words that I'm saying is because I'm in community with other people. Like, I learn words because people have taught me these words and we all agree to use them. The motifs and the ideas that I see visually is because as a human being, I'm absorbing all of this visual and mental information that others are reverberating as well. So once I can understand that and internalize that, I realized that I'm just in conversation with the greater energy that exists out there. And that basically means that I'm in conversation with my God. And my God is giving me these prompts because of the experiences that my God has put me in. So I can now take that information and synthesize it through my human vessel, through the computing power that my brain is able to handle and that my hands are able to materialize. And even everything that God gives me and says to me, I don't even have the skills yet to produce it. So I'm still trying to catch up to some of the ideas I've had when I was a kid. That's a lifelong pursuit. So there is no such thing as getting off that boat. There is no such thing as stopping that. Because I'm never going to stop getting these messages. You know what I'm saying? I'm never going to stop thinking. I'm never going to stop being inspired because people in my world create. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. And I'm just a part of that larger community.
That's beautiful. I definitely like the way you connect all of it. It's like your artwork is a part of you now, and it will continue to be that way. And you're just like, that's not going to stop.
Ever. It can't. It'll stop when I stop.
And even then, it might not even stop.
Precisely. If I can time it right, do it right. Absolutely. Yeah.
You have done many different things. How do you bring all these aspects authentically together into the spaces you go?
Yeah, I start by just making sure I'm myself. I don't believe in that saying like, when in Rome, do as Romans do. You should respect people's cultures and customs 100%, but you should never stop being yourself. So I try not to assimilate as much as I can. Like I like to authentically show up as myself so I can feel comfortable in doing what's right for me. I feel like once you try to be somebody else, you do bad work, especially if it's not aligned with who you are. So as an artist, I understand and am innately connected to the idea of the beauty of things, the enjoyability of things. I don't believe in things like affordable housing just being adequate. It should be exceptional. And then as a designer, just knowing that basically design is solving problems, the intersection of solving the problem but also making it beautiful is really important to me. And I think that comes from my time as an artist, my time in the city of Chicago, where I could ride a train 15 minutes and noticeably see the difference in the beauty of spaces. So experientially, who I am spiritually, and who I am because of my education, I think I'm able to have a good intersection of all of those things by showing up in every aspect authentically myself and not trying to be who I think somebody wants me to be or doing something that I think somebody wants me to do. It has to be pure. It got to come from who I am in my core in order for it to work.
Yeah, I feel like everyone should be able to experience having beautiful buildings around them. I feel like that's not something that's seen in Chicago. But I like the way you phrased it too. That was very beautiful.
Thank you.
Talking a bit more about your artwork, where do you see that going with you while you do architecture?
Yeah, so art for me is basically, not to sound too cliche, but it's truly my connection to God. I feel like, again, that scientific principle that energy can't be created nor destroyed, only transferred. I don't make anything. I am, all of the thoughts that I have can be measured energetically. If that's true, that means I'm not creating anything. These ideas are being gifted to me from, quote unquote, the universe, which I think is synonymous to God. So God is bestowing upon me these ideas and these visions and these works that I want to create, and it is my duty to do that. It's my calling to do that. So art will always be a part of me because that's my spiritual practice along with my technical practice, something I've just been doing since I was a child. I love design because there are a lot of ways that artistry can be sewn into design. Design isn't exclusively art, but it can be in certain instances. I'm always going to paint. I'm always going to draw. And I love the positive feedback loop that now studying design, how that has influenced my art, and then how now my art also influences my design. So it's a loop that is now growing itself.
It's a relationship.
Absolutely. In a such a meaningful way that I almost can't give up either one ever again because they are now both such instrumental parts of who I am.
It has, in a way, created your identity.
100%. Yeah, Davey Friday, that's not my government name, but that's my God-given name. Davey is really my first name. I was born with the name Davey and given that. It's on all the documents, but I got Friday because my first name being Davey, if you keep the pronunciation but change the spelling, it'd be D-A-Y-V, Day V. V is a Roman numeral 5. And the 5th day of the week is Friday. And I ironically was born on a Friday.
That is pretty cool.
And again, I can't control that. That's God. You know what I mean? I didn't give myself the name Davey, and I didn't birth myself on Friday. You know, that was God passing this down. I just had to figure out the puzzle. And 2 of those huge pieces are art and design. And that has now shaped my identity as Davey Friday. And
Well, thank you for having this conversation with me
Thank you.
today. I love the way you speak. You're a very talented speaker
appreciate you.
and just person overall. So
Thank you so much. Likewise.
thank you. I want to thank everyone who is listening. We release our episodes monthly, and you can find us on Spotify. I want to thank our producer, Caleb Kwok, and the WIIT team for making this podcast possible. Thank you for listening to the episode of Beyond the Surface featuring Davey Friday. Until next time, goodbye.